Hello, Jenny.
Hi,
It's working. Excellent.
We're live now.
thank you.
Right. Can you make me host then, please?
You're now host,
Right.
Mr. Mac.
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you. Right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Planning Consultative Committee. I'm taking the chair just for the first item, which is to appoint a chair of the committee for the year 2020 to 2021. Do I have any nominations for chair? Councillor Jenny Fradgley?
May I nominate Councillor Ian Fradgley?
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Curtis, thank you. Do we have any other nominations? No, in which case all those in favour of Councillor Ian Fradgley being chair, could you raise your hand please on screen? Thank you all, that's unanimous, in which case I will just, how do I change host? Is that allowed? Must be able to.
I think if you click on Councillor Fradgley's name, you should be able to make him host.
Oh, right. Okay. There we go. Yes, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, right. Sorry, I was looking on mine. Yeah.
So Councillor Fradgley is now host.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next item on the agenda is to appoint the Deputy Mayor. Do I have any nominations for Deputy Mayor?
Deputy Chair.
I don't think you mean Mayor, I think you mean Chair.
Sorry, Deputy Chair. Yeah. Do I have any nominations? Councillor Fradgley.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Dowling.
Do I have any seconders for the Councillor Dowling?
I'm happy to second.
Thank you. Do I have any other nominations? No, thank you. Well done, Councillor Dowling. Yes. Yes, Councillor Fradgley.
Do we vote on that?
Okay, let's have a vote. Can we have a vote on that? Right, I think that's unanimous, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Councillor. Yeah.
Right, well done, Councillor Darling. Before I continue with the meeting, could I just mention a couple of things, if I may? There are two items which have been deferred from today's additional chairman's actions. And the other thing I wanted to mention, since the PCC is currently to run in a virtual environment, then the same rules will be used as we use virtual full council, in that members keep muted until invited to speak by having raised their virtual hand. When voting, we should be using the yes/no buttons. We haven't yet invented how we can deal with a pink card, so we'll be using the yes and no buttons for voting. I'm sure you're all sorry to see the pink card go. The other thing I wanted to mention is that last week there was a meeting between Sarah, Lisa, Joe and myself as to how we allow residents, applicants, etc. to have a presence at the virtual PCC, which you will find in item 9.5.b of this agenda. But since we have residents, etc. at this meeting, then this meeting will be run on that basis in advance of reaching item 9.5.b. Okay. Item 2, do I have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Cleeve.
Thank you. I've had contact from Councillor Lee, who says he's going to be late. Item 3, declarations of interest on agenda items, including contact with or communication from applicants, objectors, supporters or agents, pecuniary or non-pecuniary. Have we got any? Councillor Fradgley. Unmute yourself, Councillor Fradgley.
I've had communication with residents on the application pertaining to Shottery Road. I don't have its planning number at the moment, but it's the development off Shottery Road.
Thank you, Councillor Fradgley. Item 4, to receive written... Sorry?
Sorry.
Unmute yourself.
I've had extensive meetings and communications with residents and the developers on the development at the end of New Broad Street.
Thank you. Councillor Curtis.
Similarly, I've had some meetings with residents about the development at New Broad Street, and I should also declare an interest that I live just round the corner from there as well.
Thank you. Councillor Curtis, could you mute yourself now? And please, could you raise your virtual hand if you want to speak? Do I have any other declarations? No? Right. Item 4, to receive written requests for dispensation for disclosable pecuniary interests. There are none. Item 5, to grant any requests. There are none. Item 6, public participation of non-agenda items. We have none of the public wishing to address us this evening. So those who are here are specified speakers that have already registered, and you'll get the opportunity when we reach those articles. Item 7, pre-planning applications. The first one is LPS car park in Arden Street, and Mr. Spicer is the speaker. I believe he might be using some slides. I'm not quite sure. Where's everyone got? Oh, there they are. What you'll get, Mr. Spicer, is 10 minutes. You'll be on a timer. The committee clerk will give you a warning when you've got 30 seconds to go. Could you indicate that you're now ready to start? I can't see him.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, is that okay?
Yep. Okay,
Hello,
Mr. Spicer.
Hello, everyone. Very nice to see you all in this virtual world we are today. So I've come back to you today, really, to give you an update on. We came and saw you a few months ago now, probably 4 months ago, about this site. It isn't Arden Street, just to put you right there. It's off Mansell Street. It's an LPS car park off Mansell Street. So you can see on the site in front, on the slide in front of you, the red line area includes the access from Mansell Street, and you can see the car parking spaces within the red line. And you will recall the area to the top of the red line is a second red line, if you like, which is our office application, which is currently going through a planning process. If I could go to the next slide, Neil, if you wouldn't mind. Fantastic. So this is the overlay then of the office scheme and with the car park operating as it was. We've been approached by a developer. We mentioned to you some time ago there was a number of options for hotel, mixed use, residential, a care facility, all sorts of things. We've been approached by a developer, and we're now going to be progressing a scheme for 8 townhouses. If we move on to the next slide, Neil, there's a proposed layout in front of you. So this retains and reuses the existing access off Mansell Street. It creates a courtyard environment which can have permeability through to the what might be or may be redeveloped in future for the multi-storey car park, and also allows access through continuation of access of our current planning application for our office. So there's a combination of uses there. There'll be the office use, there'll be residential use, and there'll be a continuation or permeable nature of how pedestrians and so on can use this area. If I go to the next slide, this is going to test your computer now, Neil. I did try and make these as small as possible, but when I put the squiggle on it, it seems to make them quite large. If that's possible. The next slide. Here we go. Here we go. So this is a typical layouts for each plot. There is a combination of 2-bed, 3-bed, and 4-bed townhouses in effect. There's 2-storey and 3-storey in height. If we move to the next one, there's a couple of elevational sheets to give you an indication of our initial architectural styles. So, as you're probably aware, they are less traditional in style, but they do carry a traditional vernacular. So we've looked to take on board the local character of the area. Much of the area typified fronts Arden Street, Mansell Street are Victorian or Edwardian red brick terrace properties. So our proposals are not necessarily a pastiche copy of these. We've tried to take a more innovative approach. So using the kind of window openings and solid to void ratios to create a modern version of a terraced house, somewhere that we'd all like to live rather than in a rabbit hutch with no natural light. So these are generous. They're not necessarily small, but they're fairly generous units. They're definitely town centre. Accessible living across the board. They are mainly brick, pitched roof, tiled roof, slate tile roof on them. I think if we go down to the, well, it's quite important actually here on this slide at the bottom, you'll notice the office, our proposed office is on the right-hand side. You can just kind of, there you go, thanks Neil, we'll pick that up. So that's the kind of combination of the mixed use. There's the office use and then there's a residential use alongside that. And you've got that transition from Mansell Street, our site, and then the developments beyond our site in terms of commercial Conrad House. You get that transition of scale. So we're kind of 2-storey, 3-storey, 3-storey, 4-storey as you go along towards Conrad House and higher, if you like. So that's what we've tried to make sure that the site isn't just kind of missed out, but it's part of the wider built environment. If it's possible to go to the next screen, Neil, thank you very much. This is looking from the back. So this is looking with your, if you like, your back from Arden Street. You know, Arden Street's behind you. You're looking back towards the town centre itself. So this is the kind of back of those properties. You know, they've got large garden doors and so on. And you can see the landscaping on the top elevation and the kind of punctuations through that in terms of having access into the what would be future redevelopment of the car park or wider gateway. And I think if you go to the next screen, a couple more elevations. This is the bottom one's probably most important here. This is the view you would see from the Windsor Street. So you'd see the 3 houses, the back of the 3 houses, or there'll be a brick wall which we've omitted for clarity on here. And then you'll see the houses. So you have that kind of balance or juxtaposition of the 2 rows of terraces, which is very asymptomatic, if you like, of the town centre. On the next slide, this is the imagery which was used for the office development and kind of gives you an idea of the site, if the office is on its own or with the residential development within it. It's worth just noting here that you'll see on these images, the officer has asked us to make some changes, which has the grass or living wall on the ground floor of the office. You can probably, hopefully you'll see that, which is so I feel as a continuation of the hedge and the landscaping and planting along the edge of the car park, which when we last came to you, you very kindly supported this scheme, but did mention if we could increase landscaping. So we've done that as part of the application. I think there's one final slide. There we go, that's an elevation of those. So that's really, it's just kind of give you all an update on where we've been and where we're going. And if you've got any questions at all, I'm more than happy to answer those. So I mute myself. Would you do that?
Thank you, Mr. Spicer. do I have anybody who wants to ask any questions? Raise your virtual hand. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just clarify that if you are in either of Windsor Street, Mansell Street or Arden Street, you wouldn't be able to see any of the townhouses? Is that right?
If you're on Windsor Street, if I could ask Neil to move his cursor to the area on the plan with the red line, which says Shakespeare Birthplace Coach Terminal. It'll just there. It's probably a good spot actually, or that one. If you're on Windsor Street, there is a small vista, fairly long distance, I would say, 100 metres maybe or more, which you would you'd have a long distance view, and the view would be from you'll be at pedestrian level, and between you and obviously between your view and the site, you've got the coaches from the birthplace bus and other visitors and so on, cars. So you haven't got a ground level view, but you've got a kind of first floor, second floor view from there. I would imagine it's maybe 100 metres or more away. Right. Other views, so from Mansell Street, you have a limited view through the access road, and the view from Arden Street. I don't think you get any view from Arden Street. You may well have a small glimpse where the access to behind the terraced houses is. There might be a small glimpse through from there, but very limited, and possibly roofscape really.
Okay, thanks. That's pretty much what I expected. I was just clarifying that. I've got a couple more questions, Chair, if that's okay. Can I carry on? Yeah, can you just clarify the parking? Because I wasn't quite sure how many parking spaces you have got specifically for your offices and how many are for the actual dwellings. Can you clarify, please?
Yeah, so our office development has got 4 spaces within it. There are 2 spaces to the rear, which is Neil just pointed to there, which are for the property number 25 Arden Street, so they retain their current access. The dwellings themselves, or proposed dwellings themselves, have got 2 spaces per property, which is the required level for the properties that we put on there overall.
Because, well, there seems to be another 10 spaces. Well, how many's there?
Sorry, on this overlay. Overlay. So they are in fact the parking positions as they are at the moment, kind of overlaid. We try to, and the blue lines, just to make you even more confused, the blue lines on there are trial trenches. So recently we've had some archaeological investigations carried out, and those blue lines are where the archaeological trenches were dug in the car park to make sure if there was any archaeology, it was recording and so on. So I can tell you now that all the archaeology was investigated, and there's only thing they found were a few pig bones, because once upon a time there was a pig farm there, or a small holding. Right,
but all those car parking spaces at the top, they will go.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I was a bit.
That would be if you imagine you follow the grey line through, that would be the access to the office. Where
access to the okay, I understand. Yeah, so you got four for your office and 2 for each house, have you?
Yeah, and then 2 at Arden Street. And it's quite early stages this, so we're looking to create maybe shared surfaces, so it won't feel there'll be some wider use of spaces. So the roadways are quite wide, and you can see the cars on there. We could put much more parking in there if we need to. We're just very conscious of not making the development completely car biased and driven by cars, or everywhere you walk, you've got parking spaces. This is a town centre location. People are going to live here, and hopefully, we're trying to push them positively towards using town centre resources. That's a positive way of planning new developments in towns. 2 parking spaces is more than adequate. We can provide more. I don't think we should positively encourage more cars in the town that we're trying to reduce cars in.
Yeah, fine. Okay. Last point, Chair, if I may. You've got a few. Are they trees that you're planning to put in, or are they green splodges?
They're trees. So on each plot, I'll provide some further detail on. So at the front of each plot, you'll see this is all about our kind of place making, if you like, creating a kind of cultural centre in this. Although it's a housing development, we want the kind of courtyard to feel more of a cultural thing rather than just being a kind of dead, soulless, courtyard. So we're going to create some kind of built structures at the front, which are domestic storage and cycles, as well as enclosed bins, but also that have built-in post boxes, lighting. They have signage, and on each one will have a kind of feature ornamental tree. So something that is deliberately designed to not get out of control. You know, a lot of developers add or build, put trees and things in, and they get so big very quickly, they get taken down within 5 or 6 years. So we want something to be quite feature, you know, maybe blossoms or something which can have, you know, you'd expect maybe in an arts and crafts era, but in a very modern housing development. So we're looking to kind of create that language.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Flaherty.
There we are. Yeah, just a couple of points. Is the housing mix compliant with the neighbourhood development plan?
At the moment, it's quite fluid, if I'm honest. It changes. It's changing a little bit each day. So I think we've got a combination of 2-bed, 3-bed, and 4 beds at the moment. We haven't got any 1 beds at all, and the scheme, as it's designed, is doesn't provide any affordable housing due to the size and massing of the properties.
It'd be, I think there is a consideration about the housing mix and the desire of the town council to actually provide 1-bed accommodation, particularly young people in town centres, etc., etc. When you look at the plan with the car parking spaces at the back leading to your office space, the wall that you have at the end there, I don't think I was quite clear. Does that wall come down so that there is a through to where the multi-storey car park is now, or will that actually be cut off from the multi-storey car park?
When you
I wasn't quite sure. The 10 car parking across the back with the trees, that line there, will that be? Did you say that will be opened up so it would actually be a throughway into whatever development might happen beyond?
At the moment, there's a fence there. There used to be a wall which removed. There's now a fence. In negotiation with the planning application for our office, this is a landscape buffer or landscape stream across this edge of the plot. This application will be a separate application, and it may well supersede the landscaping that we would provide on the office application.
Now, my point is if that does come down, you're opening that as a thoroughfare, and the access off Mansell Street is very narrow.
There won't be a vehicular thoroughfare through there, but I think pedestrian. We're not looking to. Yeah, I think pedestrians would be more than welcome. You know, the same way that we'll be having access into the office, and so on.
Okay, thank you. And the final thing is, what any sort of energy, green energy? Are you got PVs, etc., etc.?
I'm not going to go well ground. You know, I don't like PV cells. I think they look absolutely horrendous on houses. I think there's much better ways that we can design our buildings to be appropriate for their setting. The site isn't within the conservation area. That doesn't mean we don't need to give it regard. So in this situation, we look at a fabric first approach. It's more than likely all of the dwellings will be on air source. It's very early days, but it's more than likely all of the dwellings will have that energy requirement through an air source heat pump. So very low energy, sustainable source, possibly some battery storage, but it certainly won't be using photovoltaic cells littered all over the roofscape.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Curtis.
Thanks, Chair. Just really reiterating Councillor Jenny Fradgley's points about the housing mix. Just like to ask her again, what is the proposed housing mix there? So
we've got 1 2-bed, 3 3-beds, and 4 beds at the moment. In terms of the mix, which is appropriate. It's been quite fluid, so this is changing with the developer at the moment, but we're just where we are at this moment is that kind of area, I think. Yeah, I mean, just flagging out, really reiterating Jenny's point that, you know, there is a real lack of affordable housing in the district and in the town, obviously, and I think that's something we'd need to look at really very, very carefully, because it may sound like percentages when we're talking in abstract,
but it does affect real people's lives. So I'd just like to flag that up. Thank you.
Right, I have no one else who has volunteered to raise their virtual hand. That's it. Right, thank you, Mr. Spicer. You can stay and watch the rest of it if you like, or you can shoot off to your office. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have the next item, Lench House on the Tiddington Road. Would you like to start it off? It's Mr. Peter Jenkins. You've got 10 minutes. You know, I'm sure you know the form. If you can tell Joe when you want to start. Do you want to start now?
Yes, please. Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Starting.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm another member of Studio Spicer Architects, so two in one night. Look at you. Would you mind switching to the photos of the existing house, Neil? Sorry, I haven't got it in the right order. There we go. So we've prepared plans for the Lench House, which is number 51 Tiddington Road. As a brief background, we were initially appointed by the client back in 2018 to help deliver a permission for a large extension and alterations to the house. We made a start with that, but in the process of the build uncovered substantial structural defects, which made the project not economically viable. That included movement in a number of walls, structural cracking, problems with the foundations, and also the floor and roof structures, all needing substantial overhaul. We've had a structural engineer's report on that to confirm it all. So we were asked to look at possible options of how we could take that forward, and eventually concluded that a replacement dwelling was the only viable prospect for the house. There's two more images of where it's currently at, if you wouldn't mind just flicking through those, Neil. So we're kind of like part way through the strip out at that stage. Some of you may recall that Oliver presented some proposals in November last year, which was our first draft for the replacement dwelling proposals. We've subsequently been in consultation with the immediate neighbours, both sides, and the Tiddington Road Residents Association and Councillor Rolfe. Feedback from the neighbours has been very positive, and we've made some adjustments to the plans to suit their preferences. We're still awaiting feedback from the Tiddington Road Residents Association, but hopefully that will be positive too. If you could flip to the existing permission, Neil. So that's the existing permission for the extension that we were partway through building. So it's a large detached dwelling. It has consent for a large extension, which you can see on the ground floor and first floor plans there. Excuse me, just find where I was in the notes. It goes the full width of the site, really. So on the right hand side on the plan, you can see it goes right up to the boundary. And on the left hand side, it leaves a gap of about 1.7 meters currently, as approved. It's got a floor area of 577 square meters. It's 2-storey, and its ridgeline follows fairly consistent with the neighbours either side. That existing consent also, a bit surprisingly, allows for the removal of all the trees to the property's frontage. It's in the conservation area, sub area 2 of the Tiddington Road character area, which is said to be characterised by large interwar detached houses and also by the presence of mature planting to the front gardens. It's a good example of the arts and crafts style. It contributes positively architecturally to the area. But as I say, its landscape contribution is limited and will be even more limited if this permission was to be fully implemented with all the trees removed. So, so we're proposing a replacement now, as I say. So if you could go to back to the elevations, Neil, the front elevation as a start. There we go. So that's the front elevation that we're proposing. So it's slightly larger in floor area, 24% increase. So it's below that kind of 30% rule of thumb that we normally try and target. But critically, it maintains the same ridge line, so it's not any taller, and it actually pulls in from the sides on both sides, so pulls away from the boundaries. So you get a larger gap of 3.2 meters to the right-hand side, and 2.2 meters to the left-hand side between its neighbours, which we feel helps to enhance the sense of space around the plot. You can see on that elevation, there's like a dotted line, which is the existing house. So we're actually shrinking in from the existing house on both sides in total. We've designed it traditionally to be in the arts and crafts style, which is focused on functionality, simplicity, and craftsmanship. We've got projecting jettied gables to articulate the elevation, which is like a tradition that comes from maximizing the value of a plot by building with a small footprint and then extending out on the upper floors. And we're also using traditional materials. So the first floor and the roof is all tile hanging all the way down to the ground floor. And then the ground floor is brick. And you'll probably also spot there's a circular window over the front door, which is another reference to the arts and crafts style, where they often have just a single circular window on the elevation to accent the front elevation with some geometric contrast. If you could switch to the ground floor site plan as well, so we can just have a look at that. So at the frontage to the property, we're proposing enhanced planting. So there's a range of new specimen trees, it would be native species to the plot frontage, which will help to contribute to that key landscape character of the area of having mature trees to the front once they grow out, which at the moment it doesn't really have, and it would have even less with the existing consent. Just as an aside, we've had surveys carried out for the potential for bats. It's very low impact. There were some pipistrelles, but they're common bat species. So we need to put some tiles on the south elevation, which isn't difficult to do. Archaeology, again, there's no real constraints on the site, subject to a watching brief. And flood risk, there's a very small part of the extension that enters the flood zone, no more than the previous existing consent had, and we compensate for that by lowering the ground elsewhere on the site, so there's no increased flood risk. So we've had all of those reports carried out to make sure that everything else is satisfied. So yeah, we think there's a real opportunity to build something of great quality here. Obviously, it's a shame that the existing house isn't viable to retain, but perhaps contrary to our normal reputation of only ever designing modern buildings, we've committed to a traditional design style on this, which we think can really contribute to and enhance the conservation area. I think that's about all I have to say. So if you've got any questions that you want me to answer, please go ahead. Thank you.
Right, does anybody have any questions? I can't actually see the thing at the moment. I haven't got anybody who wishes to ask any questions, Mr. Jenkins.
Okay, I'll take that as a positive.
I'll have to say thank you for your presentation,
No
and
problem.
we look forward to seeing you in a few months' time, I suppose.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, I'll go on to the next item on the agenda, which is to approve the draft open minutes of the Planning Consultative Committee meeting on the 14th of April. Do I have your approval to those minutes? Can you give me a tick, please? Councillor Curtis? Right.
Councillor Fradgley?
Councillor Jenny Fradgley? Can I have your tick?
Yeah.
All right.
Everyone's voted now, Chairman.
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. I gather my virtual signature has to go onto it these days, which I've already provided to the town clerk. Okay. Right, we'll go on to item 9.1, planning applications deferred from the Chairman's Actions meeting today. There are two applications. They are both in Councillor Fradgley and Councillor Jackson's ward, are they? Yes, I think they are, yeah. So since we've got speakers for the TA I'll take that first if you're happy with that. So Neil, could you prepare your presentation and present it? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Hopefully you can all hear me and see the screen. So just to recap, this application was considered by the Town Council in March earlier on this year. It's a detailed planning application that followed pre-application presentation that was given to you in, I think, January. Just to recap, I think you're all familiar with where it is. It's the Territorial Army Centre located off of New Broad Street. It's a brownfield site within the centre of the town, sustainable location close to the town centre. The layout previously is the one that's on the screen for you now. Ostensibly, it's the same, but with some modifications, some amendments, and that's why it's back before you this evening. So just to recap, this is New Broad Street here. At the moment, it leads into the site, which is the TA Centre. As you come into the site, the new access road is the grey area, flanked on both sides by residential properties, and a new building was proposed at the end of the access road, which was to accommodate 3 flats. So the scheme before you today, I'm going to flick between this, which was the original plan, and the current plan, and you can see visually some of the differences. This is the proposed amendment. You can see that there is a new pavement coming into the site from New Broad Street. So if I flick back, that pavement obviously wasn't there. It does include more parking along the site frontages, with reluctantly the loss of some landscaped areas in there. The next big change is the house types themselves, and also the mix, the housing mix. So you can see the footprints have changed slightly as well. As I flick between the two, you can see generally they're still both flanked on either side, but now it's a little terrace of 3 here and here. That plots remain fairly unchanged, and then obviously the building at the head of the access is still there as well. So in terms of the elevations, it's probably easier to show you in context, which is the street scenes, if you like, or cross sections through the development. The top one is effectively, well, the top 2 are the sides of the development as you come in. So in effect, the top one is what you would see on the right-hand side, and the bottom one is what you'd see on the left-hand side. And the one here, which I'm circling, was the elevation that you'd see as you enter the site. So that's the building at the head of the development. So that's how it was proposed previously, how it's proposed now. So you'll see the change in the terracing. So there was originally a gap with a detached property there, but also you'll see straight away that the elevations have been treated differently. So a move away from red brick and plain tiles, chimneys, sash windows to something more modern. Which includes a slate roof, I believe, and aluminium powder-coated cladding on some gable features throughout the site. Still got chimneys. The building at the far end is still 3 stories in height, but you can see there that it's a fairly significant change away from the traditional approach that was previously before you. And I'm sure the speaker will give some explanation to that. In terms of the mix, well, actually what I should have done, beg your pardon, is read out what you previously said on the first scheme. So just to recap, you submitted a holding objection. You said you were supportive of the principle of the redevelopment of the site for residential purposes. However, you raised some issues which you felt needed resolving prior to the grant of permission. The first one was construction traffic. You felt that had to be from Seven Meadows Road rather than New Broad Street, because that would be inappropriate because of the narrowness of the road and the on-street parking, And you'll recall the resident who spoke to you back in March explained in detail the situation that's currently there. You also wanted it to be a non-gated development as well. You had some concerns, or you raised some concerns that that local residents had brought to your attention in respect of the foul drainage, the sewerage system in New Broad Street. You also had an issue with the housing mix. It did not comply with policy CS19 of the core strategy and H7 of the neighbourhood plan. You commented that the level of parking appeared to be satisfactory given the proximity of the site to the town centre, so you were happy with that. You said that tree and landscaping and tree planting must be carefully thought out and maximised given the current climate emergency, and you requested electric car charging points to be incorporated into the development, and you pointed any SIL or Section 106 monies towards improving the existing Scout Hut facility. So on the mix issue that you raised previously, I can confirm that it is a much better mix. In essence, there has been an increase in 3 beds and a decrease in 4 beds. So one less 4-bed that's turned into a 3-bed. And in terms of the flats, originally they were all 2-bed flats. Now there is a 1-bed flat and 2-bed flats. So it's not absolutely spot on what your neighbourhood plan suggests, but it's probably as near as you can get it on a scale of development of this size, bearing in mind that we're at it's 10 units. So the neighbourhood plan requires 10% 1-beds. The proposal is 10% 1-beds. The neighbourhood plan requires 35% 2-beds. The proposal is 30% 2-beds. The neighbourhood plan requires 40% 3-beds, and it is 40% 3-beds that's proposed. And the neighbourhood plan requires 15% 4-beds, and the proposal is at 20%. So it's a little bit out on the 2-beds, a little bit lower than it should be, and a little bit higher than it should be on the 4, or I should say 4+ beds, so 4 and 5 beds. So overall, the mix much better, not quite 100% in accordance with the neighbourhood plan, but obviously have to factor in some degrees of tolerance on that. And in terms of the construction environmental management plan, that's been reassessed or revised. The county council have confirmed that they don't object to the planning application, subject to, and I haven't got it up on the screen, but I can do when the speaker is speaking, a temporary construction access off of Seven Meadows Road. And the Highway Authority have suggested to the District Council that if they were to grant planning permission, there should be a condition that the construction traffic should only use Seven Meadows Road. So that's their recommendation. If I just flick back to the layout, there was also some debate last time in respect of pedestrian access onto Seven Meadows Road in this location here. That access is still proposed for pedestrians post completion of the development. And I think it's fair to say it's undecided at this moment in time as to whether or not it would be a locked gate with a code, and that code be made available to the residents on the development and possibly other residents in New Broad Street. So all in all, I think the issues that you raised previously have probably been dealt with, but you now need to consider the revised design, I suppose, as being another fundamental change to the application. I think that's probably my presentation done, Chair.
Thank you, Neil. Right. Any councillors need any points of clarification from Neil? Raise your virtual hand if you have. Right. Councillor Dyer?
Is it still going to be a gated community?
My understanding is that it won't be gated at the New Broad Street entrance, and the the speaker can no doubt confirm that. I think there was some confusion previously because the plan was a little bit unclear that was originally submitted as to whether it was or wasn't gated, but I think there was reference in the design and access statement that it wouldn't be gated, but I'm sure the speaker can confirm whether it is or it isn't, but my understanding is that it isn't.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Curtis.
Thank you. Again, just that's good news about the non-gated community, and I welcome the improvements on the housing mix, but as you acknowledge, it still falls short of what's required in the core strategy and in the neighbourhood development plan. And it seems, although I'm relatively new at this, it seems that almost every development that comes before planning committees has some reason for not meeting those requirements. And again, as I said previously, there is a massive shortage of the 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom units in the town, and that really does concern me. This is something that does affect real people. It's not just an abstract percentage.
May I interrupt, Councillor Curtis? This is for points of clarification.
My apologies, Chair.
I know you're new to the game, but this is just reserved for asking Neil questions for clarification on his presentation.
Thank you.
We'll have a separate chat. I haven't got any other people wanting any clarification from Neil. So I now propose to go on to our speakers. We have Sam McNaught-Barrow who wishes to speak. Sam, you will have 3 minutes. Jo will time you and she'll give you a 30-second warning when you're nearly there. And I know you've been through this before, so you're familiar with the process.
Thank you.
Okay, you can start.
So first of all, we are delighted that the access will be on Seven Meadows Road. That will be a huge benefit to the community. We would like there to be a condition that there's no construction traffic, in particular subcontractors that will access via Broad Walk, Broad Street and New Broad Street. Working hours are recommended. Does that mean that work can take place outside these hours? We'd like that clarified. We'd like there to be a condition that the road be adopted under section 38, that no property be occupied unless and until the highway is adopted. We would like a condition to prevent any vehicular gates or bollards ever being constructed. We feel that there are not enough 1- and 2-bedroom units. Affordable housing is really important. Parking, there is still some concern as garages get used as storage rooms and over time become offices. And realistically, guests of the owners will come, and we have a parking problem, which I think everybody is aware of. Drainage and sewage, some residents have concerns that the drainage going into Old Town will cause a problem. There have been incidents of foul waste overflows in people's gardens, which have been documented. I'd like to know where the drainage for Old Town Mews flows into, whether it's in Old Town, or whether it goes into Seven Meadows. The footpath. Some people in New Broad Street feel particularly strongly that they do not want this. If there is going to be one, then it should be gated and there should be a code on it. Design. So we appreciate the changes that have been made, but dare I say that we feel it's a bit lazy design. There's a real possibility here to create something beautiful, and throwing new materials on a traditional looking building just doesn't cut it. Windows should be bigger. If you look at the surrounding community, there are bigger windows, and these are tiny little rabbit hutch windows. Brick. Why not use reclaimed Stratford brick? It would make it look so much better than what's been proposed at the moment. And there wouldn't be any increase from the research I've done in construction costs. There's no green energy considerations in
30 seconds.
In this day and age, that is a real shame, a great shame. We're really excited about welcoming 10 new units into the community. We are a great community and we don't want to be obstructive. We want it to be the best possible living experience for the people who are going to be here. And we don't want it to impede existing residents, some who've been here for many, many years. We really want it to be a great experience and great construction for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to stay in place, and I would invite the councillors to ask any questions which they may wish to ask. Councillors, do I have any requests, any questions for the speaker? Councillor Jackson? Mr Mayor, sorry.
Yes, can you just clarify the point that you made about the footpath and that you wanted that to be gated or something? That didn't. Is that right?
Okay, so there is very kindly the developer said, look, you know, you can have a footpath which is open, you can have one which is gated and a security code being on it, or you can have none at all. And we feel that, I mean, some people, the people in New Broad Street, they're really not happy about it. At the moment, it's a cul-de-sac, and they feel that an access to it would be a security issue. There may be antisocial behaviour, and who's going to manage it? You know, who's going to weed the footpath? Who's going to actually look after it? Who's going to keep it lit properly? So if it's going to be there, because I understand from a planning point of view that footpaths and cycle paths are encouraged, but if it is going to be there, there has to be restricted access, we feel, because otherwise anybody could come down and it impedes the security of the area.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. I don't appear to have anyone else who wants to ask any questions. Okay. Right. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
You can stay and watch the debate and see how it goes from there.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now I'd like to call on Liz Nicholson, who is representing the developer. Liz, you know the rules.
Yes.
Usual. Do you want to start now?
If we can just put the site plan out, it might be useful to have the site plan on the screen
Right,
as we're talking.
yes,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So we've submitted revisions and additional information to address not just the planning officer's comments, but also to respond to the town council's comments and the ward member comments and local residents' comments that we received. And there were four main areas that we looked at. We looked at highways, drainage, housing mix and design. In terms of highways, I can't say it too many times, there are no gates, there's no bollards. We are looking to have the road adopted. We're waiting for the county response on that. The previous layout was suitable for adoption. We just need confirmation on this one. We've also removed the entrance features, the pedestrian gates and walls, and you can see the continuous footways. Neil's pointed out that the county has confirmed the construction access of Seven Meadows Road is acceptable to them. So we're all in agreement on that one. We have retained that pedestrian link to Seven Meadows Road, but if the planning officer agrees it should go, we're quite happy to remove it. We've shown it as gated and with a security code, but it can go if that's the agreement of the planning officer as well. And obviously the largest refuse vehicle can turn on site and everybody else who's using the road can also turn on site. And the parking provision we've kept much higher than policy because we know there are existing concerns in the local area. With regards to drainage, we've done further work with the drainage consultant and Severn Trent Water, because we'll be putting in gardens and soakways compared to the current site, which is all hard surfaces. There's going to be a 90% reduction in surface water runoff from this site. Now that will go into the combined sewer in Old Town through New Broad Street, but on the basis of that 90% reduction, Severn Trent Water have approved the initial developer inquiry. That's just a very early stage approval. We have looked at drainage going out directly to Seven Meadows Road, but we'd have to dig down to find the connection, 5.5 metres. It would likely be a 2-week closure of the road. And we don't think we're going to get approval for that because Severn Trent Water's guiding principle is to minimise the amount of disturbance. And we also think it would fail CDM regulations in terms of minimising risk. Neil's gone through the housing mix in great detail. I think the only comment I could make is it doesn't precisely meet your mix, but we can't provide half units. And at this scale of development, we can't provide 3.5 2-bedroom units and 1.5 4-bedroom units. And in terms of design,
30 seconds.
We've done a lot of work with the planning officer. The planning officer made quite detailed comments with regards to design, and we're hoping that we've addressed those by providing, thanks Neil, by providing modern, narrow-fronted terraced house types. We've tried to remove the suburban feel that the planning officer felt was out of character with the area. And we've introduced the aluminium cladding as a sort of reference back to the industrial buildings on the site at the moment. And obviously, if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you, Liz. Councillors, anybody want to ask any questions of Councillor Jenny Fradgley? Councillor Jenny Fradgley?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I think a lot of good work has been done here. I like the way that it's become a terrace along leading off the existing road. I think that's very good. My two concerns. One is the sewerage. We do need very, very high level assurance that that sewerage isn't going to impact on the existing houses. Perhaps we have to go to the district for that. I'm not sure, but that needs some very high level. The other thing is, I am a little disturbed about the change in design. I think the terrace works well. I'm not sure about the powdered aluminium. I mean, it is cladding. Is that aluminium actually safe? It presumably must be super safe now with the Grenfell Tower sort of cladding fire, but I believe theirs was an aluminium cladding. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. I'm also a bit concerned it's made all these houses together quite a unified block, whereas coming in from Old Town, although those houses have a shared rhythm and a shared shape, there are differences there. This seems a little aggressive in its sameness. I do have a particular concern. Oh, sorry, I'm going into why have you done it? I shouldn't go into discussion. Why have you gone down that powdered aluminium route?
Okay, just coming back to the drainage point, in terms of the planning policy requirement, planning policy at the moment only asks for or requires a 50% reduction in surface water from a site. We're actually going to be providing a 90% reduction, and that then enables, it's purely the surface water runoff from the roads. That's the only water that will be going into the combined sewer along with the foul sewage. In terms of design, we're hoping that we've addressed the planning officer's comments, who gave quite detailed comments in concern about the approach we'd taken initially. We haven't got it in front of us tonight unless Neil's put in all the documents. I'm afraid maybe I should have sent it in to you, but in our supporting statement, I think I included photographs of a scheme where the aluminium cladding was used. And that's probably my original one, the February one. Have we got the most recent one? Probably at the bottom, isn't it? The third document up, yes. I think there may be photographs in there. The aluminium cladding was used on a site in Kenilworth in the grounds of a grade 2-star listed building. And it looks very successful. And we thought, as I say, it was a reference back to the industrial buildings that are currently on the site. And it also, the planning officer, as I say, was concerned about this suburban feel. So the front gardens went, the hard boundaries between the car parking on the frontage have come in, and we've tried to make it these narrower fronted plots. So that's really the route we've taken. I don't know if the photo, they might be in at the end somewhere. Oh, that looks like the original statement, sorry. That's the February statement. It should be in that letter, yes, 5 pages. That looks like the right one. I hope they're in there now. I think Neil gone to all this trouble. No, sorry. It could be one of the attachments that we sent.
Could I just check that? I mean, I'm asking an obvious question, but the cladding is completely safe and above board, considering the difficulties that we've been having with cladding.
Well, I can't answer that for definite, but it would have to go through building regulations. And as far as I'm aware, building regulations have been updated in line with the new safety requirements. So it would be picked up that way, I think. I can't tell from the names the council's given as to which document it might be, sorry.
Okay. Can I move on? Does anybody else want to ask a question? I haven't got anybody that wants to ask a question. So thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
If you'd like to retire. Right. From what you've heard from the speakers and from the questioning, have you got any further points of clarification that you want to talk to Neil about? If you have, please can you raise your hand, your virtual hand? No, it doesn't look like anybody wants to ask any more questions. So we now go on to the debate. Do I have anybody who wishes to start the debate? Oh, got to go somewhere. I shall have to go around the table then. I'll start with Councillor Dowling.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's good to see that the changes that have been made to the application. I'm quite pleased. I'm still a bit nervous about delivery lorries and bin lorries coming up New Broad Street into the site. It's a shame that we couldn't have had an access in from 7 Meadows Road as we suggested in the last time that we spoke about it. But I am quite pleased. A little disappointed that you can't split your you can't build 2.3 2-bedroom houses, Liz. I thought you'd be able to do that without any problem at all. Yeah, the plan looks a lot better than it did in the first place. So I can't see any reason why we would object to it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dowling. Next on the list is Councillor Curtis.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I made my points at the wrong time about the housing mix, but it does still concern me. I also, must admit, I'm less convinced by the addition of the aluminium cladding. I don't honestly see that I can see that it does reference the previous use there, industrial use, but as something on the front of the houses there, to me, it doesn't really add to the aesthetic quality of it. In fact, I find it rather detracts. And I would also like further reassurance, rather than just that if it does stay, that it does conform to building regs. Is it absolutely safe? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curtis. Councillor Dyer.
Actually, I was about to bring up the cladding as well. We must have assurance that it really is safe. We want assurance, not just told we believe it's safe. Yes.
That is Councillor Dyer.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman. I think personally there have been a lot of improvements, but for me, I have a major issue with the design and the inclusion of that cladding. I think it looks awful.
Is that a planning reason, Councillor?
Well, no, it's not. But I'm just saying I wouldn't want the cladding because of the safety issues that everyone's highlighted. But I also think, from a design point of view, it's not to the standard that we would require from that area for that area.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Fradgley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased about some elements in this. I think it's really actually moved towards much more of what we wanted. The housing mix. I think the extension of the terracing from the old town is just what we need. It's a shame that the trees have gone, but we need to perhaps think about trees in the back gardens, or perhaps on the edge at the back behind the bigger building. I'm delighted about the county have agreed to actually access from the back. That is exactly what we want. That must be absolutely sure. Nothing must come down to this site from Old Town. I would support the residents in actually not wanting to have a pathway through, although slightly sad because we do need cycling permeability through the town, but I do understand the issues of safety and security. My big concern is design. I'm very uncertain about the way in which the aluminium cladding kind of overwhelms the brick, and the brick is what actually links it to the existing area. I've got no problem with actually riffing on those designs and making them more modern, but I think the cladding is slightly out of place. My other concern is particularly the windows on the main block at the end. The centre windows are square, if not slightly landscape, and that's completely out of character with that part of the town, which has has portrait windows. So that's my real concern, is the overwhelming impact of the powdered aluminium as it appears in this. See on the main building at the end, the two main windows over the doorway. I find those very out of character with the square headings. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. I won't go over a lot of old ground here. I think the comments that we made previously, I think, have been addressed. We're never going to get an ideal housing mix for this, so I think we're going to have to live with this one. I think, in my view, I don't have a problem with that. Design is so subjective. It's not my cup of tea, but I'm not saying that I wouldn't. It's not, it might be approved. I'm not quite sure where we go with comments about design. The gut feel is that we're not happy with it, but I'd struggle to object against it. I think it's quite how we phrase any comments, I suppose.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does anybody else want to have anything to say in this debate? Councillor Darling?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wondered if, after what everybody said about the design, I must admit I don't like the aluminium cladding as well. I would have much preferred to see some Juliet balconies and things like that, and some pictures on the front. But I'm wondering, question to Neil really, whether we could ask for a condition that a temporary barrier is set up at the entrance to the site from New Broad Street to stop any delivery and construction traffic going in that way. It's definitely something that's been mentioned, and they are providing an access from Seven Meadows Road. And I do think that if they're coming from the town, the people are just going to drive in through that entrance anyway, unless we actually put a temporary barrier up and stop them from doing it. Is it possible?
Thank you. Councillor Curtis?
Did you want me to answer that? Sorry, Chair.
I did. Thank
yeah,
you.
Go on then.
Well, anything's possible, I suppose, within reason. The Construction Environmental Management Plan is a fairly comprehensive document, and not only would it specify that construction, traffic and delivery should be off of Seven Meadows Road, and it should also give an indication of times of working as well. It normally also includes signage and things like that, and you'll be familiar with the sort of no construction traffic sort of temporary signs that you've seen around the town in other places. it will be a building site for some time. It will need to be secure through Harris fencing and things like that as well, because clearly when the site's under construction, under health and safety rules, you can't have people just wandering into the site in any case. And having 2 potential points of access and egress is going to be a management issue for the site managers. So it's probably self-policing, to be honest, that there will be Harris fencing along the new Broad Street access point. You could, I suppose, request that that's specifically conditioned, but ultimately the condition is there that says construction traffic only from Seven Meadows Road, or will be, assuming it gets approved. And if construction traffic is not, or is using New Broad Street, then there is a clear case of breach of condition, and I'm sure the residents would be straight onto the district council, as is their right, to notify of that breach of condition. And just around the corner, I'm sure it wouldn't be too difficult for the district to go out and remind people where they should be doing it. But generally speaking, building sites are so well regulated, heavily regulated, it probably isn't necessary, to be perfectly honest, but you could flag it if you wanted to.
Well, the one in Tiddington, and we remember we had rather a lot of trouble with, Chair, the one in New Street in Tiddington, with people coming in at odd hours. So I would ask that if it's possible to put that in as a condition.
Yeah, I personally, I think, well, talk to Councillor Rolfe about Arden Heath, because they didn't exactly follow what they're supposed to follow, which has caused chaos in that area. Councillor Curtis, did you forget to switch your hand off?
No, thank you, Chair. Sorry, my mouse was playing up. Yes.
You keep it in your pocket.
Thank you. I think this is, I mean, I'm really pleased, reiterating the point that the access onto Seven Meadows Road. I think that is going to really make the local residents feel much more assured. And just picking up a comment, amplifying a comment that Sam McNaught made about the feeling of community. The Old Town really does have a strong sense of community. And I think, just then going back to the point about design, there is a certain degree of subjectivity in design, yes, but there's also a degree of objectivity. And I think if this development looks very different from the surrounding streets, which I think the aluminium cladding really does mark it out as being different. I think what we want to do, as you know, I'm speaking as a resident of Old Town as well as a councillor here, is that I think we would want all of these new developments to feel as integrated into the community as possible, and architectural features that mark something out as being very, very different, I don't think enhance that sense of community, that we are all part of this community. So again, it doesn't add anything to me at all. I don't, yeah. Sorry, thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to say anything? Just for a second, could I welcome Councillor Lee to the table? Unfortunately, Councillor Lee, you won't be able to vote on this particular application because you haven't witnessed the whole of the procedure. But don't go away.
Understood. There's a lesson for everyone. If you're gonna, make sure you add 2 hours of padding on a meeting rather than just 1.
Councillor Fradgley, your hand is first raised, Councillor Fradgley.
Yeah. If everybody's finished, I was just going to make a suggestion for a vote.
Could I take Councillor Jackson first?
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I'll have to get used to this, Mr. Mayor.
No, Councillor Jackson's fine. Don't worry about it. No, so I was going to ask Neil for guidance almost on what we can and can't say about the design, and if we are unhappy, is that a valid planning reason and we throw it out, or is it more subjective than that?
Through you, Chair, design is obviously a material planning consideration, so you are perfectly within your right to comment on design, support the design or oppose the design. My view is that in order to express yourself properly, you ought to not just object to the design, but actually say what specifically it is about the design that you find objectionable and why. So in other words, give the planning authority, give the applicant something to go on. It sounds like the design change has been instigated by the planning officer as opposed to a voluntary thing from the applicant. That's how I've interpreted it. And you're absolutely right. Design is probably the most subjective thing in planning. If you feel that this design approach is not appropriate, then you have every right to explain that and perhaps request that it goes back to the more traditional brick and tile approach previously. I'm sure it wouldn't be too difficult to revert back to that elevational treatment. But yeah, if you're going to raise it as a concern or an objection, you need to be specific. And I've certainly picked up on Councillor Jenny Frasley's comments about the cladding overwhelming the traditional design, that not being in character, and the scale of the upper floor windows. I mean, those are quite specific points if you were to raise design as a concern.
Thank you, Neil. Councillor Jenny Fradgley?
I was only going to suggest that we had a holding objection for one more meeting with the planners and the developers to see if there are any tweaks that could take place that would answer some of the issues. I don't think they'd answer all the issues that we've said, but there might be some small alterations that would make the designs more acceptable to the planning committee.
Is that a proposal, Councillor Fradgley?
That's a proposal.
Thank you. No doubt.
I would not want it to take up too much time, but I just think that one more discussion might actually help.
But it would be helpful if part of the proposal, when Neil does his construction of the response, does indicate these things that you're talking about. Yes. Do I have a seconder for Councillor Fradgley? Councillor Curtis was first up. Okay, so we've got a seconder. Right, could I ask you to vote on that proposal? Neil, can you switch me off? I've lost the list. Could I ask you to press yes?
Or no?
Or no? Yes or no? I've got one. You keep flipping in and out, Councillor Curtis. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Everyone 5, has voted.
6. And I'll go for that myself. Yes, so it is unanimous.
Yes.
Thank you. We now need to construct the response through Neil. Have you done? I can't see what you're doing at the moment, Neil, because I can normally see what you're doing. Have you constructed a response? Right.
Bear with, Chairman, I'm not that quick. I started to, and then I realised that your thingies went onto the right-hand side, so you couldn't see who was voting. So
yeah, that's right. That's what happened.
You're now live on my computer screen as I'm typing. So if you just bear with me.
You'll have to get the spellings right first time then, Neil.
I always do. Right. I'm not on mute, so you can hear me, hopefully. And you've probably been reading it, to be fair. So do I need to read it out to you? Hopefully you can.
Could I just ask Councillor Jenny Fradgley what she wants to say? Councillor Fradgley?
I'm just a bit concerned about saying we want it reverting to the previous design. I'm not sure that's absolutely true. I just think it needs to be revisited to see if there are any tweaks that can be made to make it more acceptable. To have a modern interpretation there is not objectionable. I think the main objection is some of the fenestration and the cladding with the kind of square heads. But I'm not sure that you'd want to go back to those kind of suburban looking houses that we looked at before. Don't know if anybody else agrees with me, but that was my view.
So I've just put at the end there, then the council would like to revisit the design and discuss this with the planning officer and the applicant.
Yeah.
You know, you're almost sort of sitting on the fence a bit there. I think you perhaps need to either say that the current design is unacceptable or it is acceptable, to give the planning officer some sort of instruction, for want of a better word.
The current design is unacceptable, but we'd like to look at it, to have another discussion on it.
So is that observation?
We feel the current design is unacceptable, because I think most people have said that. But very open to have a discussion to see if we can make it work for the town, for us and for the developers.
Yeah, Chair, Councillor Dowling.
Yes, Councillor Dowling.
It doesn't say anywhere on that Neil's reply that we would like to put a holding objection on it, which is what Councillor Fradgley suggested. Are we going to have those words put on? The town council would like to put a holding objection until such time as we speak to them. I think that's what Jenny said in the first place.
Councillor Fradgley?
Very much a holding objection. Yes, that's what I wanted. Yeah, because I think most of this design is passing muster. There's a bit that needs a little bit more consideration.
Okay, so I've added the top there. Then the town council submits a holding objection. I have ticked the object box or circle. And I've just added, I've revised it again. The town council would like the amended design revisited and would be happy to discuss alternative options with the planning officer and the applicant. Anything else? Any other comments?
Yeah, could you just say, we haven't said anything about the footpath and whether I think we agreed, well, we considered either option of either not having the footpath or having it gated, but I'm not sure that we had a decision as to that, but not sure who makes the decision on that. I think either gated or no footpath is approved by us, but is that one for the residents and applicant to discuss?
Well, I mean, if you as a town council feel that it shouldn't be gated, or if it is gated, it should be locked. So in other words, is it free access or is it restricted access? Is a better way of describing it. If you have a view either way, then this is the time and the place to make that view known. And obviously, the applicant sounds like they're quite happy to go with either option. I suspect, from my experience, the police design liaison officer would not want free access. They would almost certainly want no access at all, or restricted access to residents only. It seems a shame to not have a link there, because if you were living in this site and you wanted to go for a walk down the tramway, then you've got to go right round the houses, haven't you? And that would seem a bit daft. But if it was gated and it was coded so that the residents of New Broad Street, or indeed the development, could get access onto Seven Meadows and walk down the road, then that seems entirely sensible to me.
I agree. Restricted access is fine with me.
Okay. Do you want to take your hand down, Councillor Fradgley?
All I was going to say was, if an access is agreed, it should be restricted.
There we go. I've added the footpath link to Seven Meadows Road should be restricted access to residents of the development and perhaps New Broad Street residents only. And should not be a free access for all. On the grounds of there we go. On the grounds of secure by design.
Right, is everybody happy with that? I can see Councillor Dowling is happy. Is everybody else? Councillor Fradgley, could you just give me a tick or a no?
I was going to say, might want to use the yes buttons so it's recorded.
Yeah. Councillor Curtis?
Sorry, yes, on my way. Oh, God, sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
That's unanimous. Can we post that now, Neil, please?
Consider it posted.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz, and thank you. Oh, Sam's already disappeared. No doubt we'll be seeing you again in not too distant future, Liz. Oh, Sam's back. Thank you, Sam. We've finished now. You can go home if you like, if you're not already at home.
Many thanks.
Thank you. Okay. The next application is 20/011222 full 29A Shottery Road. I'd like to call upon Neil to do a presentation. Thank you. And you can join in on this one, Toby.
Excellent, thank you.
Right, okay, where are we? We are here. Right, this is a bit of background. You have previously seen a planning application on part of this site for a single dwelling back in June, 19th of June last year, so almost a year ago. The application was withdrawn. To give you your bearings, this is Shottery Road. This is the existing properties on Shottery Road. There is an existing gravel driveway between the two properties here, which leads to a house which is not shown on this plan, but it will be on the next plan. And the application that you previously saw was for the erection of a two-storey rectangular building in here. Your comments on that application were no reps. The highways did, however, object on the basis of the access being substandard in width for two vehicles to pass side by side. They felt that as you came into the site, committed yourself, and then saw a car coming towards you, not quite all hell would break loose, but somebody'd have to then reverse all the way back or reverse onto the highway, and that would be a highway safety danger. So I suspect, I can't confirm, but I suspect that's why it was withdrawn. In terms of the current planning application, bear with me 1 second. Right, so this is the current application site. So that house I was showing you earlier on was located in here. So that's the house behind the existing properties that has the gravel driveway and the access going into it. So this proposal seeks planning permission for two houses. And there we go, that's what's before you now. So effectively exactly the same as was proposed previously, a two-storey dwelling in here, but another, effectively a two-storey dwelling in here. This application also includes, and I'll zoom in here because it's probably difficult to see, a slight widening of the access between this point here and this point here. So you can see that dog leg of that red line. Previously, when this application was considered by the Highway Authority, that red line went straight along here like that. So there's a slightly wider 6.14, if you believe the annotation on the plan, in width here. So effectively this area in here, two cars in theory could pass side by side. Obviously the rest of the track from here down to here is still single width effectively. The key issue I would suspect is not the principle, because it's obviously within the town, it's not within the conservation area, fairly sustainable, if not highly sustainable location, walk into town, easy peasy. The main issue would be the highways safety issues. Unfortunately, the Highway Authority haven't responded yet. Given that they objected to this one, I'd kind of be surprised if they didn't object to this one. I don't think that that passing bay there is going to make an awful lot of difference to the issues that they raised previously. And obviously you're intensifying the use of the access, going from one house to, sorry, two houses to be fair, because 34A uses it. So going from two houses using this access point to three. So, and obviously they can't physically widen here, that would be impossible. This area here, where the second new house is going, is part of the Gardener 34. And the thing that immediately struck me was, why on earth didn't they widen all of it down to here, given that that's part, you know, that land is within their control. I have to say, if they'd done that, that's a fairly short section of road, and they probably would have had more favourable responses from the Highway Authority. That's entirely my prediction. And obviously, we don't know what they're going to say on this, but what is before you is 2 houses with a slightly widened access. Now, obviously, you didn't raise objection to it on highway safety before because the Highway Authority hadn't responded when you made your comments. You made your comments, I think, on the 19th of June, and the Highway Authority made them a couple of days later, or at least they were posted on the website a couple of days later. Councillor Jenny Frangley will no doubt speak in a moment, but she did also raise concerns on the previous application about the impact on the neighbours, and also the sort of overbearing nature of this building in particular, which that's plot 1. So that's this plot here. That's just a couple of elevations. It effectively is slightly lower than a normal 2-storey house because there's rooms in the roof. Fairly modern design. I mean, you won't see these houses from any public view because it's obviously backland development. And that is the design of the rectangular building. So I can fully appreciate that that is a very bland, quite overpowering elevation. Whether or not it's sufficient distance to avoid any direct impact on the neighbours. It's quite some distance from the rear elevations of these properties to the north and these properties to the south. I mean, these are fairly large back gardens. I would probably estimate that they're 20+ meters. So I suspect, despite the fact that it would be pretty unpleasant to look at out of your back windows, it's far enough away not to cause any direct harm. But again, that's a subjective issue to a certain extent, overbearing and what have you. Loss of light and loss of sunlight and daylight is more of a technical assessment, and I would suspect that this does conform to adopted guidelines. But the overbearing issue, again, like design, I suppose, is somewhat subjective. So I think that's probably all I need to say in terms of the presentation, Chair. I think you're on mute, Chair.
Sorry? Sorry, Neil.
It's okay. You were muted, but you're not now, Chairman.
Oh, right, sorry. Thank you, Neil. Does anybody want to ask Neil any questions as points of clarification? Councillor Fradgley?
Yes, Neil, can I just ask, with the single sort of barn-like building to the right, is there any alteration from the last application in height to eaves and height to ridge?
I'm pretty certain it's identical, but I will bring up the previous application and that particular plan and show you, and I'll do a sort of a comparison. Can you all still see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's a good start. Right.
It's the same.
It certainly looks the same by eye, but let's just quickly shop between the two. So that's the one that was part of the previous scheme. That's the now scheme. So yeah, it's identical.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, so can you just clarify, looking out of from the neighbours and overlooking it, there looks to be 2 trees, the trees there, and is that the blank wall that's behind it?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That this plan shows 2 existing trees outside of the application site.
Yeah.
So 2 points to raise there. Then one, they are within the gift of the owners of these 2 properties as to whether or not they stay or go. The trees will indeed, I'm sure, looking at if that's an accurate tree survey canopy spread, they're quite substantial trees, I would suggest.
Yeah.
So we'll offer a degree of screening against effectively that elevation. No,
Yeah.
just that elevation, because that's the back. So that's the front of the building. So that's what they'd see. It
Yeah.
does raise another issue, which is that canopy overhangs the application site quite significantly. And that means that there are branches and leaf cover that would potentially be going over that property. So obviously that might be an issue in terms of damaging those existing trees. Whether or not you want to raise that as a secondary issue is obviously up to you.
Can we do that when we didn't object the first time?
Yes, you can. I mean, it's not 100% consistent. I assume the trees were on the previous plan as well. But there's, two wrongs don't make a right. If you suddenly realise there's another issue, and yes, there you go, the trees are there, then clearly, you can raise that now as a going concern because it's just been brought to your attention. It may well be that this isn't going to cause any harm to the trees. And just looking at what was said on the previous application by the county ecologist, and it looks like they haven't mentioned the tree. This is just to do with bugs and slugs as opposed to trees. So it might be worth flagging that the tree officer should have a look at this. I mean, it's not within the conservation area, so the trees could be removed at any point by the owners, but obviously they're not within the application site. So those people who own those trees would quite rightly feel aggrieved if a development affected the root structure or the canopy of their trees. I mean, largely that's a civil issue because it's damage of private property effectively, but the planning system should be there to ensure that those sorts of situations didn't arise.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other points of clarification? No, thank you. We don't have any speakers for this particular application. Councillor Fradgley, do you wish to say anything as ward councillor?
I still find this problematic because of its access. I think that putting more cars down, this is really quite a tiny little access coming out onto Shottery Road. Shottery Road is a massive car park, and to actually come out of here and go into this space is quite problematic. I'd be interested to see what the county have to say about it. So my main difficulty is the access. I've got no particular difficulty with the house on the left-hand side because it's got space around it, and it's not really impinging on the residents in St Andrews. It's the other building which has got problems, I think, because of the very bland, overbearing nature of both side elevations, but particularly the side elevation that faces the gardens into St Andrews. So those are my two main problems, and just to ensure that I believe there is a right of way, a right of access along that gravel pathway to one of the homes in St Andrews. So that needs to be preserved if any of this actually gets permission to go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Fradgley. I think we now need to go into debate. Does anybody want to start the debate? Councillor Dowling?
Yeah, I'm with Councillor Fradgley completely. My two main concerns. I'm absolutely certain that I raised that concern about the access at the last time with this application. That road is just too narrow. It's impossibly narrow, and that little extra lay-by that they put at the top will make no difference whatsoever. So I know one of my favourite sentences was beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I don't like the building on the right-hand side at all. I don't think a completely blank wall one with two tiny little windows is in any way good looking. But that's not my concern. My main concern is, and I would object strongly to any permission on this because of the access. It's just too narrow.
Thank you, Councillor Dowling. Councillor Curtis?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just reiterating what Jenny and Bill have both just said. I'm just looking at that access on Google Maps at the moment. It's absolutely tiny, and it's not just the issue of owners getting their own cars in and out, but access to delivery vehicles, other goods vehicles. It looks, and although that extra lay-by may make a little bit of difference, the length of the house still makes quite a long, very, very narrow entrance there. It just doesn't seem to work, let alone the rather unpleasant nature of that long building with no windows. But yeah, the access, and it's that road, it's difficult to drive down anyway. The road isn't wide enough. There's too much traffic down there already, and I think this only further exacerbates it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Curtis. Does anybody else want to add anything? No? Does anybody want to make a proposal? Councillor Dowling?
Yeah, I propose that we object to the application on the access and egress. It would be impossible for, even if it was wide enough for delivery lorries, it would be impossible to turn into it with the amount of traffic, unless they take a traffic parking space away on either side of it, which they're not going to do because there's nowhere to park in Shorey Road anyway. So I strongly object.
Right. Can I have a seconder for Councillor Dowling's proposal? Councillor Lee? Okay, so could I ask you to vote, and it's yes or no? Well, it looks like we've got a full house there. So we will go with the proposal made by Councillor Dowling and seconded by Councillor Lee. Could I ask now that Neil does his scribing? Huh. Could I ask now that Neil reads it out?
Right. The Town Council objects to this current application on the grounds of highway safety. The Highway Authority objected to the previous withdrawn application for one dwelling. This application increases the number of dwellings, with only a very small section of the access being widened. 3 dwellings utilising this narrow access is unacceptable on highway safety grounds. The tree officer must also be consulted on the application, as it looks like plot 2 would affect the roots and canopy of 2 trees on adjoining land.
Councillor Fradgley?
Could we just actually add that we do have a concern about the rather bland nature of the side elevations and its overbearing nature on the gardens?
I've added the bland elevation and overbearing nature of plot 2 is also a concern to residents adjoining the site.
Thank you.
Right. Is everybody happy with what Neil has written? Could you let me know? Councillor Curtis? And Councillor Dyer?
I'm happy with, as I said, what you just said on the note, yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you, Neil, if you'd like to post that.
Thank you, Chair. That is posted.
Thank you. Right, now we've got to go on to, we've finished all those. So we go on to 9.2. To note action by the town clerk after consultation with myself and Councillor Darling on the 27th of May. Are you happy to note that? Okay. And on the 2nd of June, which is today, the attendees at the additional chairman's actions was myself and Councillor Dowling. Item 9.3, street paving, none. 9.3b, licensing, Sig and Sip and Squeak. On 13 Woodlands Road, which I gather is a private address. Do I have any comments on this? Councillor Dowling?
Yeah, it's very similar to one we had about a month or 6 weeks ago. I've no objection to having an office there, but I would object to any keeping of alcohol anywhere near the premises again. It's 13 Woodlands Road is a terraced house, probably semi-detached house, former housing association house, and I think that it must be a condition that that there is no alcohol kept anywhere near the business.
Thank you, Councillor Dowling. I'll just add that I did make an inquiry as to whether it was going to be, what kind of a business this works. And I'm told it's, it's an internet business. You're buying booze over the internet. What I haven't managed to find out is where this booze is being kept before it gets dispatched to the purchaser. So you're quite right. And personally, I would think that we need to, if they're going to store alcohol on site, then what security arrangements have been put in place?
Well, I don't agree. I don't think that they should have permission to store alcohol on site.
I don't disagree with you, Councillor Dowling. Councillor Taylor?
Thank you, Chairman. They are actually an outside functions company for weddings and events. So I would imagine they're only going to be purchasing that alcohol for the specific events that they have and not storing it on site.
Thank you. Councillor Dyer?
I'm worried in case they do sell it to people around about, it could cause antisocial behaviour.
Thank you, Councillor Dyer. Councillor Jenny Fradgley?
I've no problem with it being an office, internet business, whatever. It mustn't store alcohol on site at all. That would be crazy in that area, in that small area. So no storage of alcohol on site, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, just to confirm, actually, we've now almost set a precedent because we have had previous applications for similar internet offices, and we've always said all along no alcohol on the premises. And I just think we need to stick to that principle that we've adopted.
Absolutely.
Councillor Dowling, are you back in? No, Councillor Dowling's gone. Okay, I'm getting a feeling that we have no objection to a business being run from those premises, but not the storage of alcohol on those premises. Is that what you'd like us to respond? Could you tick if you're happy with that? Councillor Curtis? Yep. Councillor... Right, thank you. That's carried unanimously. Item 9.4. There's only one thing on that list of note, and that is that the District Council agreed with our views on the development at Mason's Court in Rother Street, i.e. we objected and they've refused it. I've got item 9.5. It's the A46 resurfacing, which I gather is from the Ulster Road island up to the pub at the top of the hill. Do you have any comments you wish to make about that?
Sorry to interrupt, Chair. May I be excused?
Yes, that's fine, Neil.
Well done, everybody.
Bye-bye. See you.
Good meeting.
Yeah, cheers.
See you soon.
Cheers.
Yeah, noted, Ian.
Councillor Jackson?
Yeah, can I just check, are they going to close the road completely? Or is it going to be traffic signals or whatever?
Have you read the document, Mr. Mayor?
Not well, I looked at it. I didn't. You're going to say it's in the document, is it? I didn't think that it said specifically, but it was said it was going to be resurfaced. But I'm not sure that I noticed that it said it was going to be a total closure or a partial closure.
Yeah, I could give you my personal opinion. At this particular point in time, it sounds to me as if it's a mad proposal. And the reason I say that is because we have another application to put a business park down that road. So they're proposing to resurface all that road and then come and dig it up again. Because if you recall, they want to put an island down by the gym place. So to me, it doesn't make sense. It's the timing. Councillor Curtis.
Thank you. Yes, I'm assuming, pick up Mr. Mayor's point, that I'm assuming it is intended to be a total closure because of the massively long diversion. It's an enormous diversion that they're proposing for it, if it does go ahead. And again, picking up on the Chair's point, that it seems rather ill thought through to do it, create all that inconvenience with all the diversions and so forth, and then have to redo some of it again. Doesn't make much sense, really.
No. Councillor Dyer?
The document does say access to frontages will be maintained at all time.
Is that it, Councillor Dyer?
Yeah, but so it will be open to people who live up there, yes.
Yeah. Councillor Fradgley?
I think this is an issue to clarify with the the county and possibly national highways, because it won't really be a county job, because this is national highways.
It is national highways.
Yeah. So the question should be asked on the development at the business park development, and I'm quite happy to ask that question and get some information on it if that's what you'd like.
Yeah.
Because I'm a bit puzzled by it.
Are we, as a planning committee, going to make any formal response to this, or are we just noting it?
Could I actually say that perhaps we just send a question to the county national highways saying what is the relationship between the development proposed and the resurfacing of this road, just to clarify it. Note of clarification.
Does everybody agree with that? Can you? Oh, sorry, Councillor Curtis. Okay, Bill. Can't hear you, David.
I'm agreeing. I just ticked agree.
Oh, right. Okay. Councillor Dowling.
I'll just make the point that we know that it's on the plan for a dual carriageway, which started in Cheltenham at about, well, I don't know if it's even still going at the moment. It'll get to us in about 2 or 3 years' time anyway. So there's two counts. There's a business park in Ireland and a dual carriageway. It's just ridiculous. So Jenny's idea is absolutely perfect.
Okay. Right. So I've got Councillor Taylor. Are you in agreement with that? Okay. Right. Thank you. That's gone through. The next item I've got is 9.5.b, public rules of engagement.
Noted.
Noted. You've noticed that we've been using them throughout the meeting. I didn't think we've got any choice, to be honest. Item 10, Chairman's verbal report. I haven't got anything to say, except one thing, that this agenda does not include the usual SDC planning committee dates. That's because we don't particularly have any planning committee dates from SDC at this point in time. But just to inform you that I'm aware that they're planning one, so to speak, and it will probably be before the end of June. So we'll have the pleasure somehow of seeing something on there. Okay. Requests for alteration of recommendation, none. To appoint substitutes for the next chairman's actions. Do I have somebody who might substitute? Councillor Taylor.
I can do it, yes, no problem.
I could. I might actually be away. I could be in Rio, or I could be in, Tenerife.
Where are you getting the flight, Bill?
Yeah.
Elon Musk is offering a private service.
Is it a one-way ticket? Okay then.
Bought an old barrage balloon from an army surplus store.
Okay, the next meeting is scheduled for the 23rd of June at 6 p.m. And I'm closing the meeting at 20:04. Many thanks.
Thank you, Chair.
I hope you've enjoyed the experience doing this on Zoom.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got to go off to another Zoom meeting now.
Bye-bye.
I'm half an hour late for it.
Oh my God.
I'm going downstairs.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yes, bye-bye.
Bye.
Will you close it down, will you, Joe? Thank you.
Yeah, I've closed it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.